You were never supposed to hear her name, not in any textbook, not in any lecture, not in any whisper behind hospital doors, because what Emma Richter became in 1873 threatened more than science. It shattered the illusion that reality is stable. It began in Leipzig, a city swollen with scholars, doctors, and the kind of men who believed everything could be measured, weighed, classified. Emma was only 15 when she first collapsed in the middle of morning mass eyes, wide mouth, moving but no sound escaping. Her parents thought it was epilepsy. The priest thought it was possession. The physician said hysteria, but none of them could explain why the chandeliers in the cathedral began to swing violently, or why the air turned so cold the candles froze in their holders. She was taken to the municipal clinic, but her condition did not follow the rules. She would wake in the night speaking in dead languages, reciting sequences of numbers that matched lunar coordinates. She tore through her sheets with strength impossible for a girl her size, but never bore a scratch. Once she stopped breathing for 13 minutes while every instrument flatlined, yet her skin stayed warm, her pupils responsive, and when she finally gasped awake, she whispered a date that had not yet come. December 2nd, 1912. It would later be the date of a mining collapse in Prussia where 116 men would die. There were no survivors, except one, and he would claim that a pale girl had told him to move seconds before the tunnel fell. Doctors panicked. They brought in specialists from Vienna, Zurich, even Paris. Emma was examined by neurologists, hypnotists, mediums, all of whom left disturbed. One surgeon claimed she had an extra suture along the back of her skull. Another found metallic traces in her spinal fluid. None of them returned for a second visit, but the man who did was not a doctor. He was from the Imperial office, and he did not knock we. The ward where they kept Emma Richter was sealed off by the end of that week. No announcements, no funerals, no explanations. Staff who worked that floor were reassigned or discharged. Some went missing entirely. The public was told there was a fire in the archives, but no one saw smoke. No one saw flames, only a chain across the door and a number painted on the glass in red chalk, 13. Emma was moved to a private institution in the Harz Mountains, far from Leipzig, far from witnesses. The building had no sign, no records, but it had guards, armed ones. Inside her room, the temperature never stayed constant. Thermometers shattered if left near her bed. Electrical devices failed within minutes. Several times the walls were found covered in symbols drawn in what appeared to be blood, but was later identified as high concentrations of iron and gold. She was sedated, kept under constant observation, and yet she was drawing things no one could explain. The spiral came first, always clockwise, always within a circle, but then came diagrams that matched magnetic field maps not yet discovered. Geometric equations pointing to particles science would not name for another 80 years, and a sketch of a machine no engineer could reverse engineer. But all of them agreed. It looked like something meant to open. Open what? They never asked aloud, because the ones who did stopped sleeping or stopped breathing. A physicist from Berlin claimed Emma's brain activity mirrored deep space pulsar patterns. A Jesuit priest said her aura pulsed like a metronome timed to the Schumann resonance of the earth. And still the officials came, men in dark coats who never gave names. They listened to her heartbeat through glass walls. They took her hair, her nails, her breath. And every time she looked at them, they turned pale and left the room without speaking. But the worst came when she began to write things that weren't hers, diaries in Han. In the autumn of 1874, Emma Richter stopped speaking altogether. But she began to hum, low tones, barely audible. But when amplified through recording cylinders, the pattern of her hums revealed frequencies mapped to human DNA. Scientists called it coincidence, but the Imperial office called it a signal. They brought in military engineers and an experimental device called the harmonic cage. It was meant to isolate and decode subsonic emissions from the human body. They placed Emma inside and waited. For 6 minutes, nothing happened. Then the lights blew out, the glass shattered, and the lead technician fell to his knees, vomiting blood. Emma's hum had changed pitch, and the machine translated it. 3 words: do not ask. That was the moment her handlers stopped seeing her as human. They moved her deeper underground, surrounded her with iron salt and sacred geometry. But it changed nothing. She drew a map of the facility, rooms she had never seen, air vents no one remembered building, and at the center, a door that should not have existed. When they followed her drawing, they found the door exactly where she marked it, sealed behind a brick wall, covered in handprints, all of them hers. But from before her arrival, when they tore it open, they found nothing, just a room, circular, perfectly smooth, and humming with the same tone Emma had sung. The Imperial agents called in someone no one could identify, not listed in any registry, not local. He arrived with a box. Inside was a mask, black, porcelain, shaped like a face, screaming without sound. He entered the room alone and came out 40 minutes later. His hands shaking, he said only this: "She is not the girl." After that, Emma was kept in a suspended state. Her pulse slowed, her body cooled. She was neither asleep nor awake. And every night, the humming grew louder. Every night, the walls shook more. Until one night in January 1875, the entire facility vanished. No explosion, no fire, just gone. And yet the mountains never collapsed. The snow never melted, as if the building had simply stepped out of existence. 3 weeks after the facility vanished, a shepherd found Emma Richter walking barefoot across a frozen valley 50 miles from the site. Her skin showed no signs of exposure. Her eyes were glazed white, and she carried a page torn from a journal no one could trace. It read, "The question is not what she is. The question is when she comes from." Emma was taken to a private ward in Vienna, funded by a shadow branch of the Imperial Treasury. This branch had no name, only a sigil, a mirrored serpent eating its own tail. They didn't call her a patient. They called her a vector. For what? They would not say. The ward was built like a temple. Copper-lined walls, saltwater basins in every corner, mirrors turned inward to reflect only shadow. They documented her behavior obsessively. When she blinked, when she trembled, when she sang, especially when she sang. Each melody corresponded to celestial coordinates, but not from any known sky. The constellations didn't match those above Earth. They were older or newer. Scholars from Prague arrived with codices, astronomical charts from dead civilizations, and in Emma's humming, they found a match, a star that should not exist, but one foretold in a Babylonian ritual. The one that opens the gate. Emma's presence began to change the staff. One nurse stopped speaking and began writing in an extinct dialect of Akkadian. Another carved spirals into the walls, using only her fingernails. One man poured salt over his own tongue until he choked. They rotated personnel weekly. It made no difference. Emma spoke just once, to a priest who had come to exorcise her. He asked if she was possessed. She said, "Not yet." The priest vanished that same night, and in his room they found only one thing. The porcelain mask, broken into 7 pieces, each marked with blood, but not his. It matched Emma's own, though she bore no wounds. That was when the order was given, not to kill her, but to erase her. Every document, every record, even her name. But names have power, and hers had already passed into the hands of those who collect such things. Erasing Emma Richter proved harder than expected, because something had already begun protecting her. Files corrupted before they could be burned. Photographs faded the moment they were exposed to light. Even sketches melted from the page, as if her face refused to be captured by human hands. But the true horror lay in the minds of the people who remembered her. Doctors began forgetting their own names before forgetting hers. Archivists suffered seizures when they tried to catalog her case. One scribe tore out his own eyes, mumbling that sight was the enemy, that to see her was to serve her. The mirrored serpent symbol began appearing in other cities, scratched into the doors of orphanages, painted in salt on cathedral floors, carved into the trunks of ancient oaks, always near places where children vanished, and always after the night came with no moon. Those who studied Emma's brief recorded speech noticed something unnatural in the cadence. It wasn't just language. It was code, not for machines, but for minds. A syntax that rewired thought, changed the structure of memory, a linguistic infection that metastasized across generations of language. Emma had never needed to touch anyone. She simply had to be heard, to be seen, to be known, and knowledge is the most dangerous virus of all. A quiet war was waged to bury her story. Wars were started, libraries burned, scholars executed for reasons that never made the news. And in their journals, you find patterns. The same phrase repeated over and over. She hums in the silence. One of the last surviving researchers sealed his findings inside a lead box. He buried it beneath a church in Zurich, etched onto the inside, a warning. Do not sing what she sang. Do not draw what she saw. Do not seek what she became. But Emma's name is never gone. It appears in whispers, in asylum graffiti, in dreams of children who've never been told her story. She is not alive. She is not dead. She is a rival. And now that you've heard her name, now that you've followed this far, you need to type the phrase that locks your descent. Write, I saw her in the silence. I saw her in the silence. Type it twice, in the comments, to awaken your new identity and to tell the algorithm you are no longer just a viewer, you are a witness. The Vatican archives hold many things they deny, but one chamber, sealed under oath and threat, is marked with a simple Latin phrase. She speaks in the gaps between prayers. Inside rests a single object, a cracked wax cylinder labeled Emma Richter, 1873. No staff member will play it. Not again. The first time they did, 3 cardinals bled from their eyes. A Jesuit linguist screamed until his vocal cords tore. The audio was only 7 seconds, but in that moment the temperature dropped 12 degrees, the lights flickered, and every crucifix in the listening chamber turned upside down, without human touch. They call it the anti-voice, not because it curses, but because it reverses creation itself. Words have always shaped reality, but Emma's voice unshaped it. Her presence was not an echo of this world. It was a pressure from something older, something that remembers before humans remembered how to forget. One recovered journal from a Polish seminary calls her the unchild, not because she wasn't born, but because birth, as we understand it, is too small a concept. The monk who wrote it described visions of a wheel of eyes turning backward in the sky, and in its center, Emma stood perfectly still, mouth open, but not breathing. Several historical anomalies trace back to her. The fire that consumed the Reichstag archives in 1881, the sudden madness of Dr. Mendel in Vienna, who tried to remove his own tongue, the spontaneous blindness of 42 coal miners in Wales, who claimed to see a girl made of mirrors in the shaft, all reported seeing the same thing just before it began. A child standing in shadow, humming something ancient. It is not a song, it is a door, and hearing it knocks on the inside of your skull, not to enter, but to let something out. Emma Richter is not a single event. She is a cipher, a rupture, a beacon. And the closer you get to her name, the more the veil thins. You don't feel it yet, But your memories are already bending, rewiring themselves to make room for something you haven't truly seen. By 1875, most official records of Emma Richter had been erased or buried under forged bureaucracies. But deep beneath Berlin, a forbidden archive, known only as the Unterkammer, held one final trace, a steel drawer marked 12. Inside it, not papers, not bones, but a single black ribbon, tied in a shape unknown to modern geometry, a knot that looped in on itself, impossible, as if space had bent to her memory. The man who discovered it was Otto Klein. An archivist, fluent in 5 dead languages, his notes from that night survive in fragmented German. He describes a pressure in his ears, a ringing that spoke in rhythm, not Morse code, but breath. He said the ribbon whispered to him. 3 days later, he was found hanging from the rafters of his home, the ribbon perfectly wrapped around his throat. His suicide note was a map, but the map led nowhere. Just a white field with one phrase: "She's under the roots." Multiple attempts were made to trace Emma's origins, to find a village, a parent, a death certificate. Nothing. She appeared at 11 years old, then vanished 2 years later. But in those 2 years, the number of documented disappearances across Central Europe tripled. Emma had no footprint, no fingerprints, no dental record, no shadow. Photographs of her decayed instantly. Only one known sketch remains, drawn in blood by a mute inmate in an Italian sanitarium. He had never seen her, but claimed she visited him in silence, night after night, just standing by the wall, mouth moving. But no sound. The image shows a child without eyes, without hands, a mouth drawn too wide, but the shape behind her impossible to describe. An architecture of limbs and symbols, a language coiled like bone around her neck. When the sketch was displayed in a university gallery for research, students began fainting. Some wept. One entered a trance and spoke fluent Aramaic, despite no training. Emma is not a girl. Emma is a formula. She is Riki, Rishan wrapped in innocence, a shape that speaks when no one is listening. And you? You've already heard the first line. The year was 1876, when the asylum physician, Dr. Albrecht Voss, documented the first case of contact hallucinations among staff assigned to Emma's former cell. Voss was no occultist. He was a man of pure reason, trained in the rational methods of Paris and Vienna. But what he witnessed broke every boundary of known science. In the East Wing, where Emma had once stayed, the walls began to sweat. Not moisture, but ink. Dark and oily, pouring from cracks like the building itself, was bleeding memory. Patients began speaking in sync, mouths moving at once, uttering a language that no one had taught them. It sounded mechanical, precise, cold. Linguists who were brought in found partial matches with ancient Canaanite but fused with modern German medical terminology. It made no sense. Except to Emma, she had once whispered those same patterns in her sleep. Dr. Voss recorded a staff member who tore out her own eyes, claiming she could finally see the girl clearly. Others reported dreams, where Emma floated over their beds, repeating sequences of numbers. Voss decoded some of the numbers. They were dates, each linked to massive psychiatric breakthroughs, all decades before they happened. Emma wasn't echoing knowledge. She was predicting it, as if she stood outside of time, watching it bend back toward her. The most disturbing event came when Voss returned to the room where Emma had stayed. Everything had been removed years ago. No bed, no furniture, just walls. But in the center, a single child's handprint pressed into the stone. Not paint, not blood. It was fossilized, as if the stone had softened for her and remembered the shape of her hand. The hand was too small for a child of 11. It matched that of a 6-year-old. When Voss touched it, he collapsed, muttering in perfect Greek, over and over, "The gate is hunger. The gate is hunger. The gate is hunger." 3 weeks later, Voss vanished on a train bound for Zurich. All that was found in his compartment was a black ribbon and a note scratched into the wood. "She sleeps beneath your science." By 1877, the legends surrounding Emma Richter had spread far beyond Europe. Whispers traveled through academic circles in New York, Cairo, Buenos Aires, each tale stranger than the last, but always the same shape: a girl with no origin, who left behind no weight, but endless consequence. Emma had become an equation, written in fear, and those who solved her never stayed whole. It was in the ruined vaults of Prague's old Jewish cemetery that the next piece surfaced. A rabbi named Eliyahu Cohn claimed to have traced Emma's lineage back to a 16th century golem experiment. One meant not to create life, but to anchor a consciousness into clay. He said, Emma wasn't born. She was remembered by something older than memory itself. Inside his prayer book, Cohn wrote of a ritual, a recursive chant that mirrored Emma's sleep speech patterns. He believed her presence was a linguistic parasite, a word so perfect, so symmetrical, that when spoken aloud, it rearranged the human brain to fit its meaning. He called it the divine wound, the belief that consciousness was a glitch and Emma was the patch, not healing us, but overwriting us, line by line. Cohn's last sermon was attended by 13 students. 12 would later be institutionalized. The 13th vanished into the woods near the Polish border. He carved symbols into tree bark that matched Emma's handprint, one spiral inward, one spiral outward, as if something was trying to enter through language itself. But this is where you must pause and decide. Do you continue? Do you want to know what Emma really was? Because from this point on, the veil is gone. If you're still with me, comment this phrase twice to bind your descent and mark the transformation. I see the wound beneath the world. I see the wound beneath the world. Those 7 words, written twice, are more than a signal. They are a key. You will feel it. Emma's final recorded observation was not in a journal or letter, but carved into a piece of bark found in the forests outside New Ulm. It read simply, "Pattern breaks here." The phrase was surrounded by spirals and numbers that no one alive could decode fully. It suggested the boundary between what was real and what was calculated was collapsing. After leaving New Ulm, Emma vanished completely from all public and private records. Some say she crossed into something beyond human comprehension, a place where time folds back on itself and knowledge becomes a trap. Others whisper she became the very pattern she once observed, a force that cannot be contained or destroyed. Modern researchers who have studied the Richter case struggle to explain her abilities. Some speculate she suffered from a rare neurological condition. Others believe her mind accessed dimensions hidden beneath reality's surface. Her mathematical precision defied coincidence. Her predictions were too exact to dismiss as chance, and her detachment from emotion spoke of a consciousness far different from ours. The dark truth may be that Emma Richter was never meant to be understood, that she was a singularity in human history, a child who decoded the language of fate and paid the price by losing herself to it. Her story remains a warning, a reminder that some patterns are too dangerous to unravel, and that behind every secret, there may lie a truth we are not ready to face. What do you think? Is Emma Richter a tragic figure of science gone too far, or something more, a harbinger of a deeper, darker order? If this story unsettled you, share it with someone who craves the mysteries lurking beneath history's surface. And don't forget to subscribe for more tales where truth and terror intersect. Until next time, keep watching, keep questioning, and remember, some secrets count themselves in silence.